Hello, and welcome to the 404 Media Podcast, where we bring you unparalleled access to hidden worlds, both online and IRL. 404 Media is a journalist-founded company and needs your support. To subscribe, go to 404media.co, as well as bonus content every single week. Subscribers also get access to additional episodes where we respond to their best comments. Gain access to that content at 404media.co. I am your host, Joseph, and with me are two of the other 404 Media co-founders, the first being Emmanuel Mayberg.
Hello.
And the second being Jason Kebler.
Hello.
We had to rush to publish a developing story, which is the first one we're going to talk about. The headline is Experts, Lebanon pager explosions likely not lithium batteries alone. I want to caveat right up top that this is a developing story, as I said. More information can and likely will come out, but we weirdly do actually have some expertise to contribute here, because Jason has covered sort of the world of batteries and recycling and fire hazards and all of that for a very, very long time. So it does actually sort of provide us a unique way into the story. I guess just first of all, Jason, before we get to all the stuff about the batteries, how did we first learn about this story and what has happened as far as we know?
Well, I first learned about it because Emmanuel said something about it, because I was not monitoring the internet when it happened. But I mean, it's one of the biggest stories in the world right now. It's like the New York Times, like writers, everyone is writing about it. But essentially, caveat, like developing, things are changing, and like by the time you're listening to this, there may be more explanations out there. But from what we have seen, something like 1,000, possibly 2,000 pagers, either simultaneously or near simultaneously exploded in Lebanon. Most of them seemingly belonging to people who are affiliated with Hezbollah. I think 8 people are dead, thousands are injured, and a lot of the people who are injured are not the people who had the pager on them. Like, there were also bystanders who were injured, which I think is an important detail and one that we can talk about. But as you said, I've written about battery fires quite a lot over the course of the last several years. Lithium ion batteries notoriously are very dangerous if something bad happens to them. Like if they're punctured, if they're shredded, if they're damaged, if they're overheated. It causes this thing called thermal runaway, which is where the cells inside of the battery itself start self-heating, just because of the chemistry of the battery. And when this happens, it gets hotter, it gets hotter, it gets hotter, it gets hotter, and it catches fire eventually. And then usually after a few seconds of being on fire, it will explode. This has caused...
You go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, this has caused a lot of e-waste recycling plants to burn down. It's like the biggest threat to e-waste recycling and regular recycling and trash management in the US right now. Like at least one of the biggest in trash management, definitely in e-waste. It's like when one of these gets into a shredder in an e-waste facility, it will catch fire, and that can be very bad. And these fires are at an all-time high, which is just a long way of saying that I've seen a lot of these fires before.
I'll add, Jason, is it fair to say at this point, a very well understood problem, because it's not just an e-waste risk, it's also anywhere where a large number of these batteries are stored, right? So in New York, I know there was a lot of fear about all the electric scooters and bikes, repair shops, official and unofficial, right? Like those are a big fire risk. Electric cars, obviously, you said like the most likely ways for this to happen is the batteries being punctured, and obviously with an electric vehicle, moving it high speeds. That is something that could happen, and we've seen happen with Teslas, and is very dangerous. And I think it's to the point where like firemen are getting trained on battery fires, right? Because they're becoming more common.
That's definitely true. A place sort of around the corner from my house burned down, an e-bike rental spot burned down about a year ago because one of the, batteries associated with the e-bike caught fire, and then all the other ones did, and then the place caught fire and it burnt down. This happens very regularly, like you said. And there's also been a couple like very high profile consumer electronics situations where this has happened. Like the Galaxy Note 7 had a defect in it that caused the battery to catch fire and explode, and no one died from that. There were some like serious burns, and then there was a while where you like couldn't fly on a plane with the Galaxy Note 7, and there was a massive recall and things like that. So that's the context in which I've reported on this in the past. It is definitely a big problem, like for society more broadly. And in this case, we don't know exactly what happened, but it seems like the fact that there was a lithium ion battery in these pagers was leveraged in some way in this attack.
Yeah. Maybe just to back up a little bit before getting to what the experts said, but there's broadly two leading theories, right? The first is that there was some sort of interference or cyber attack with these pagers that triggered the battery by itself to overheat and then explode, right? That's one theory. And then it seems on the other side, people are saying, no, it seems that something additional was added to these batteries to cause the sort of the size of the explosion from these devices. And what we've sort of learned from speaking to our various experts is that they believe that is more likely, which of course brings up questions of how the attackers, whoever they may be, were able to put additional resources into these pages. Hezbollah has blamed the Israeli authorities. And what did these experts say exactly when we spoke to them? I think there's a quote at the top, first of all, Jason.
Yeah, so I talked to Kyle Wiens, who is the CEO of iFixit, the repair part company. They source a lot of batteries, they buy a lot of batteries, they sell a lot of batteries, and they've done a lot of research on batteries. And one of the reasons that they've done this research is because if you buy like a poorly manufactured battery, it can easily explode. I forgot to mention, like, those cheap Chinese hoverboards were exploding for a while, and that was because they had like just poor quality batteries in them that it was easy for them to explode if they were damaged in any way. So iFixit as an entity has done a lot of research on battery fires and what causes them and what they look like. And he said to me, quote, "There's no way that just a battery hurts someone other than the person wearing the pager. I also can't really see a lithium battery exploding, killing a person. Third-degree burns, yes." And to be clear, he's talking like a lithium battery of this size, because if a large one exploded, it could kill someone. But he then said, so while I'd like to imagine some kind of crazy cyber attack where they overloaded the batteries, I think it's more likely this was a supply chain attack and Israel planted explosives inside the pagers with a remote trigger. To be clear, speculating here, but essentially he's saying that the explosions that we've seen, the videos that we've seen, the explosions are way too large for this to be a lithium battery alone. And I agree with that assessment. Like, I've looked at lots of battery fires. I've looked at a lot of battery fires from smartphones, which would have a bigger battery than a pager.
Right,
like,
they're literally larger devices that are doing more than displaying a little bit of text on a pager. Right.
Yeah, and they all kind of like, they light on fire first. Like, you can see smoke and you can see flames. And when they go into thermal runaway, they swell. So they get bigger, and then they light on fire, and then they explode. And there's always visible flames. And in the videos that we've seen, we haven't seen any visible flames the sound of the explosion is very loud in the Lebanon videos, and also the explosion is clearly like it's a big explosion.
Yeah, that
Emmanuel, you're actually the one who kind of like initially told me to go do this story, and I'm just, what did you think when you saw the videos?
Well, the reason we wouldn't normally cover some, Israeli covert attack in Lebanon, but and I don't necessarily blame anyone because, as Joe said, this is a developing story, and Twitter being Twitter, people speculate, and we're doing, or our experts are doing some speculation here as well. But I saw the theory that this was a hack, meaning the devices weren't modified in any way, that somehow they were remotely triggered to quote unquote overload and explode the batteries. I saw that really pick up and spread around. And on its face, that seems not possible. Like, or if it was, it would be like, the news is wild enough, but it would be kind of a world shattering event because we're all surrounded by lithium batteries. The idea that someone can hack devices to make them explode is just like the most chaotic thing I can imagine happening. And then also, Israel specifically has a history of planting explosives as a way to target its enemies. So that to me seemed like the most likely theory. Even though, even within that history, this would be a wild escalation in complexity because there are so many devices, right? So it's like, how are you able to plant so many explosives in so many tiny little devices and get them where they need to go? Even though we're circling that as a likely thing that happened here, we don't know how. But yeah, like, and then finally, because there were so many individual instances of this happening across Lebanon and Syria, actually, there is security cameras and people just pulling out their phone and filming what has happened right in the aftermath of this. And none of it looks like a lithium battery fire, which, like Jason, have seen a ton of. Usually, I remember there was one story we did in Motherboard where it was somewhere in England, but it was just a laptop in an office overnight catching fire and, like, I think eventually burning down the whole office. And they always look the same. It's like, I said it, and then one of the experts said it. It's like you're lighting a flare, is what it looks like. And in the videos we saw from Lebanon, it is like big kinetic explosions. You don't see the shockwaves per se, but you see like destruction in the immediate vicinity, and it's instant, right? It's like it's an explosion. It's not a fire catching and smoke and flames and then eventually an explosion, which is what lithium battery fires usually look like. So I was like, Jason knows 100 people who have seen this and know exactly how this happened. So I bet they could look at it and immediately say what it is and isn't.
You mentioned that there's so many different devices, and that's true. And the other expert we spoke to is MG, who's a hardware, security, and supply chain expert in their own way, because they made the OMG cable, which is these fake USB-C or Apple Lightning cables. And he's had to come to terms with how supply chains work by manufacturing those. And of course, a malicious cable is a supply chain attack in his own right. So I pinged him, and he brought up sort of the variation you would have between all of these different pages. And he said, quote, "A lithium battery at full charge is way more reactive than a 50% drained one. So you'd see some very weak reactions across all of those devices if it was just the battery, right?" I'm paraphrasing now, but for there to be sort of a consistent effect, you would presume that something would be added to that. And he also reflected just what Jason said earlier about a phone battery. Even if it's lithium, it's going to be much, much bigger than a page reaction. So, if it was just the battery of a pager, it would be far, far more limited. I guess I feel that's probably all we can say about what we know about what happened. But I feel like you touched on it, Jason, but sort of just what is your experience reporting on lithium batteries more generally? Like, did you come to it through the e-waste perspective and like right to repair? Like, how did you build a list of people you could email and a manual asks you go contact a bunch of battery people?
Yeah, but before I answer that, I do want to say this is full speculation, but I just want to put it out there because just in case, it doesn't necessarily have to be one or the other, in that there could have been some sort of malware that caused the battery to heat, which caused some like an explosive within the device to explode. And I'm seeing some reporting about that that's being tied to news outlets in Saudi Arabia, and it's just like I have no way of vetting that at the moment. But that's like something that a few folks that I've just people who I think would know how an attack like this could work have theorized that is a way that it could work, where you kind of are leveraging this problem with lithium ion to start the explosion, but then the actual like power of the explosion itself is coming from an additional explosive in there. Again, I don't have any reporting on that. I don't know, but I think that sounds very plausible to me. I came into this because when I write a lot about repair, there's a lot about sustainability, reusability, recycling, etc. And the repair industries, the refurbishment industries, and the recycling industries are all kind of interwoven with each other. It's like they're all sort of trying to get more mileage out of the devices that we use. And like e-waste facilities are super interesting because electronics are often quite it's like pretty dangerous. And one of the reasons that it's pretty dangerous is because these fires can happen very easily. And the same things that are causing devices to be harder to repair also make them harder to recycle. It's like glued in batteries rather than screwed in batteries, where you can just like remove a screw, remove the battery, make it a lot harder for someone to disassemble the device if you're trying to repair or replace that battery. But it also makes it a lot harder to disassemble a device, to remove the battery so that the battery doesn't explode when you put it through a recycling shredder, which is like a machine that shreds the device and then sorts the materials. And so a lot of these fires are caused because the batteries are very difficult to get out of different devices, especially like really small ones like smartwatches. Like Amazon was selling a button for a while where you could just like hit a button and order more laundry detergent. And these were basically designed to be e-waste. So when they got to recycling centers, it's like it takes a lot of human hours to get these things out. And often they have to like use a crowbar or something. Like I saw a bunch of MacBooks being crowbarred open at this e-waste recycling center I went to. And the people doing it were wearing like full protective equipment, because if they were prying these batteries out of the MacBooks and they punctured the battery, it would explode. And so it was very dangerous. And that's sort of like how I came into it. I wrote a lot of stories about this problem that they were facing. And it's one that's like very intertwined with right to repair, et cetera.
Yeah. I'm glad we were able to take that expertise and contribute to this developing story, even in the small left of field way we can. All right, we will leave that there. When we come back, we're going to talk about something we're a lot more sure about. That is that the AI-powered surveillance dystopia is already here. We will be right back after this.
When we launched 404 Media, I knew we wanted to sell merch, but I had no idea how to set up a store. Then I found Shopify, and now you can buy those beautiful green hats that we made Setting up and managing our store was so easy because we use Shopify. Shopify is the global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business, from the launch your online shop stage to the first real life store stage, all the way to the did we just hit 1 million orders stage? Shopify's there to help you grow. Whether you're delivering daily digests or serving sensational scoops, Shopify helps you sell everywhere. From their all-in-one e-commerce platform to their in-person POS system, wherever and whatever you're selling, Shopify's got you covered. Shopify helps you turn browsers into buyers with the internet's best converting checkout, up to 36% better compared to the other leading commerce platforms. And you can sell more with less, thanks to Shopify Magic, your AI-powered all-star. Shopify integrates with every other software we use, meaning I can seamlessly print shipping labels, track orders, and manage our entire 404 Media store from just one platform. Shopify powers 10% of all e-commerce in the US. And Shopify is the global force behind Allbirds, Rothy's, Brooklinen, and millions of other entrepreneurs of every size across 175 countries. Check out shopify.com/media to grow your business, no matter what stage you're in. That's shopify.com/media.
All right, and we are back. Jason, this is another one you wrote. Larry Ellison's AI-powered surveillance dystopia is already here. For those who don't know, who is Larry Ellison exactly?
Larry Ellison is the CEO of Oracle, and Oracle is just like a massive, massive cloud computing company, security company. They do so much stuff, and yet if you ask me what Oracle does, I couldn't be like, here's what Oracle is known for specifically, because they're kind of like a Microsoft-esque company, and it's like early web, gigantic company.
I believe it's data centers these days, which ties into what we're going to get into.
Yeah.
But I believe that's most of their business. Most of their revenue, I think, is data centers.
A ton of money, and everywhere all at once, but the average person on the street is probably not going to know about them or think about them. They might know about Larry because he's rich, but
he's the fifth richest person in the world.
Right, there you go.
And of course, they're known a lot for like enterprise software or database type stuff, but it's like they were founded, I'm on the Wikipedia page, sorry. But they're founded in 1977. It's just like they're like an IBM-esque company that has evolved in many ways over the years, and it's just a gigantic company.
That is a fair comparison. So he made some comments recently in a talk, right? And it was sort of talking about society and technology, surveillance and AI. What was he pitching exactly? And I mean, we'll go into sort of almost your rebuttals to each one, but what was he pitching exactly? And I guess why?
Yeah, so it was like a Q3 update, like for investors. So every company does this. They do, here's earnings reports, here's how the company was doing, here's what we are doing and how we're going to grow the company and make a lot more money. And every publicly traded company does this. And often the CEOs say crazy stuff at these investor calls. This is actually an investor event where he was in person with a lot of these investors, and it was live streamed. But they, like Oracle's thing, as all of these companies are doing right now, is they're talking about AI and how they are going to use AI to change business and ultimately like drive shareholder value, more or less. And so they did an hour-long like Q&A with various people who are using Oracle's AI products. And then Larry Ellison himself did an hour-long talk/Q&A where there weren't that many Qs. There was a lot of As. I think I scanned through it and there was like 4 or 5 questions, and he talked for over an hour. And he kept kind of just going off onto different tangents, which is maybe how we end up in this place where he starts explaining that Oracle's AI is going to be used to like fully change society. And this came at the end of his talk. And to be clear, everything else he said was also pretty nuts. He was like, we are going to use Starlink internet and Oracle AI data centers to change how hospitals operate and then change how cars operate. So he talked about it in every single sector of the economy, but then he gets into public safety and policing and surveillance specifically.
Right, which we have a lot of experience covering, and you especially. So I'll just like provide some of the things he said, and then let's hear what you think about them. So the first one, or one of the ones he spoke about, was securing schools with technology. And I'll just read out a quote from him. Quote, "We think we can absolutely lock down schools so that dramatically reduce the case of anyone being on campus that doesn't belong on campus and immediately alert someone, use AI cameras to immediately recognize that." When you read that, what do you think?
Yeah, some of these quotes are stilted because he kept changing his train of thought.
I was going to say, I was reading that. I was like, wait, is that typed correctly?
Yeah.
Did I read that properly? Yeah.
So he's basically like, AI is going to, I mean, he doesn't say the word facial recognition, but he says like, we're going to use AI cameras to determine if anyone is going to be on campus that shouldn't be there. This is something that surveillance companies have been trying to do at schools for a while. In the aftermath of Uvalde especially, I mean, there's so many school shootings, it's very upsetting to even think about. But in the aftermath of Uvalde specifically, there were a lot of surveillance tech companies that were saying, we can prevent this from happening again. And you had examples of companies that were selling like automated panic rooms in schools. Axon, the taser / body camera / lots of other police tech company, said that they were going to put taser drones in schools, which caused a big outcry, and its own ethics board then resigned over that. And then I think most interestingly, this company called Evolve has AI scanners that are now, I don't know if they're on the New York City subway yet, but they're going to be on the New York City subway. It claims to use AI and object detection to like detect guns. And so you'll have to like walk through one of these to go into schools. And some schools have rolled these out. And what they have learned, and what we reported back at Motherboard using some FOIA requests, was that there's tons of both false negatives and false positives, which is a nightmare.
Not
where
ideal
it was like,
when you're trying to figure out who has a weapon and who doesn't. Having both negatives and that's not great.
No, not good. And so things like notebooks, like 3-ring binders, were being detected as weapons. And then like knives were not being detected as weapons, were some specific examples. And, it's been a couple years now, but pretty consistently the reporting by pretty respected organizations has found that these are not super good at actually preventing. They haven't stopped school shootings. It's like we've tried everything except for banning guns.
Yes.
Some sort of gun control.
Yeah. So Larry's dream of AI around schools is already here. Okay, that's one off the list. Thank you very much. He says they could design these always recording body cameras. And I think he uses the example of, a police officer is wearing this body camera, and then they'll say, hey, with voice recognition as well, hey, please stop recording, I'm going to go to the toilet. And then they do that. And the idea is that in Larry's eyes, the cameras will still be recording, and it can be susceptible to a court order or something similar. And basically it's this idea that, the cops are going to be accountable because they're always going to be recorded. Citizens are going to be accountable as well because they're going to be captured up into this dragnet as well. I mean, what did you think when you read the stuff about body cameras?
Yeah, I mean, he said the police will always be on their best behavior because we're constantly watching and recording everything that's going on. Citizens will be on their best behavior because we're constantly recording and reporting everything that's going on. And that's kind of like the money quote. like literally describing Big Brother. Like we will detect things as they're happening. We have body cameras and they are often, but not always on. I think that cops turning off body cameras is a big problem. I think that body cameras are useful for us as reporters because we can sometimes, but not always, FOIA the footage. But there have been many academic studies showing that they haven't made a statistical difference in police brutality or police misconduct. And that's because there are many, many cases where the police are recorded doing something wrong and there's no accountability. And so, or there's either no accountability or underwhelming accountability. And so
Yeah,
it's
the
more
cameras aren't the issue.
yeah, it's like a societal political issue and sort of the ways that cops are protected in society issue versus if only the body cameras were on. That said, like an always on body camera that's also filming cops while they're peeing or whatever that can't be disabled, that says it's disabled but then is obtainable via court order, like raises all sorts of questions about like, well, why is Oracle in charge of this? Like it should be held by the cops theoretically. Like we don't want Oracle to be the arbiter of whether this public data gets released or not released, first of all. Second of all, I mean, surely, hopefully it would be encrypted in some way, but if you're storing that, it can theoretically be hacked, taken, I would imagine. And then, yeah, it's just like, if you are recording it does exist. So you're not actually giving people privacy. I think we've seen that over and over again as a potential problem across a variety of devices.
Yeah. So, Larry, we're already filming a bunch. So that's already done. Thank you very much. And this one I was actually a little bit unclear on. So what does he say about drones and using those exactly?
Yeah. He says that we have drones. A drone gets out there way faster than a police car. You shouldn't have high-speed chase with cars. You just have the drone follow the car. He doesn't say this, but he's describing something called the Drones as First Responders program. Like that's what it's called in policing. And we've done a few stories about it. And it's like the moment someone calls 911, regardless of where they're at, like the system detects their location and a drone flies out there and it starts filming. And it's like a drone can fly there faster than, like a person talking on the phone and then a cop dispatch and the cop gets there in traffic or whatever. And so there's all these cases, especially in Southern California. There's a few companies that are offering these drones and they're very popular in Southern California at the moment, where a drone just like automatically goes out and to a suspected crime scene and starts filming. And in some cases, you can like talk through the drone. So there's been cases where the police drone is there and they're using like a microphone on the drone, like a speaker on the drone to talk to a suspect. And like either, I don't know if they've done any arrests, but they're always like, hey, like we're watching you, we're filming you, so on and so forth. And this, I think that there probably is a use for drones in policing. They're very, very, very useful for finding missing people. They're very useful for like monitoring like natural disasters and things like that. But in this case, Wired did some reporting where they obtained the logs for one of these cities, and the drones were like automatically going out and investigating like someone bouncing a ball off a wall, a house party, just like random things that were not crimes, should never be crimes, and like should not be persistently surveilled or proactively surveilled, I would say. And so this also exists and it has a lot of problems.
Yeah. So Larry pitches all these things. You basically show that they all already exist in one way or another, maybe not as efficiently as Larry would like, but what's the takeaway here? Is it that we're already in that future? It's worse than he imagines? he's overlooking the bad parts, all of that? Or like, what's the takeaway from the fact that it already exists?
Yeah, there's one other that he mentions, which is AI video and like smart surveillance of smart video processing, which you've done some reporting on with Fusus. And, like it's unclear whether facial recognition is integrated into any specific system, but some of these cameras have facial recognition. Some of them have like object and action detection and things like that. And so he's like imagining a world broadly across the board where these connected cameras or connected devices are seeing something happen. They're sending data back to a data center in real time, and an AI is analyzing it. Like that is basically what he's describing across the board in some way, shape, or form. The specifics are sometimes different depending on, the way that a drone responds is going to be different than the way a static surveillance camera responds. And it's like we have all of these things. Cops are paying millions and millions and millions of dollars for them. These surveillance tech companies are getting very rich. And, any single technologies that there may be abilities to improve or stop individual crimes. I don't want to like wholly dismiss them. But it's like crime still exists. It's largely prosecuted in sort of the same way. And it is a fever dream for this sort of like always watching situation where no one commits any crime because AI will detect it automatically. But that's just like not how a healthy society should work. It's not how like like I personally don't want to live in a society where if you like jaywalk, you're automatically detected and ticketed. And we haven't talked about each individual company that's doing stuff like this, but a lot of your reporting, Joseph, has been about companies that are doing things like this. And every time, well, the vast majority of that reporting relies on either this being not as accurate as you would maybe want it to be, or it having some sort of bias in it. It's like a lot of facial recognition systems can't identify Black men very well. And there have been numerous cases where people have been falsely arrested or arrested for crimes that they didn't commit because a facial recognition system said that they did a crime. And so this like future that he's dreaming up, it's already here, and it hasn't like fixed the problems that it promises to fix, I guess is what I would say. And it costs quite a lot of money.
Yeah.
I would just emphasize that he is talking to investors and he's painting a picture of the future, which is dystopian, as you say, Jason, but it is also a future where the services that his company provides are increasingly useful, and therefore the value of the company would go up. Therefore, you should invest now and buy stock now and inflate the value of the company. And that's, I think, bottom line, what is happening. Also, Jason, you are actually intimately familiar with one Oracle product at least, which is NetSuite. You remember NetSuite?
They make NetSuite?
They make NetSuite. NetSuite, maybe if you ever worked at a large corporation, you would know, but it's like, man, it does everything. It's like HR, invoicing, billing, all that stuff. Nightmare
Not my favorite program.
No, not good. It looks very ancient and not sophisticated. Yeah, probably not best in class is my guess and hope. But yeah.
Dude, Workday is very bad as well, though, which is not an Oracle product, but is a competitor. Pretty terrible. Yeah. That's a whole class of software that is not good.
Yeah, true.
Hopefully, we can have NetSuite, but for all of our lives, basically. That sort of sounds like the pitch. I guess the last thing I would say is that basically what he's describing in a way, and I don't think he used this specific term, but there's definitely this trend among the surveillance companies now to make so-called real-time crime centers, which just brings together all of these usually sort of disparate technologies. Like you have the automatic license plate reader, then you'll have the drones, and you'll have the facial recognition. And it's like, let's bring those all together in one place to have this sort of omniscient omnipresent view into what people are doing. And Axon is trying to do that, funnily enough. And I think that's shown not just in the name and the branding, but they also recently partnered with Flock, which is that company that you earlier mentioned as well. So like companies are trying to act even more concretely on this vision. They're just doing it in slightly different ways.
Sorry, one more last tangential thing. I'm very sorry. It's very tangential, but
say your tangential thing in 1 second.
Okay.
So a lot of the companies are trying to merge all of these services together, as you said. So it's like the hope that he's doing, they will like all talk to each other is like the big dream. Okay, go ahead, Emmanuel.
Have you seen Rebel Ridge, this movie on Netflix?
No, but
have you heard of it?
You won't shut up about it.
I want to watch it. I was going to watch it tonight, actually.
Definitely watch it. I suspect Jason will watch it, and maybe it will spark a blog, because the way police body cam footage and dash cam footage is like triggered and stored and transferred is like pivotal to the plot of the movie. The movie is not about that. It's like a thriller action movie, but the details of that are pivotal to the story, and it's a good movie.
All right. Tune in next week for Jason's review of that film. If you are listening to the free version of the podcast, I will now play us out. But if you are a paying 404 Media subscriber, we're going to talk about how Snapchat may soon use your own AI-generated likeness or just AI-powered likeness to target ads back at you. You can subscribe and gain access to that content at 404media.co. As a reminder, 404 Media is journalist-founded and supported by subscribers. If you wish to subscribe to 404 Media and directly support our work, please go to 404media.co. You'll get unlimited access to our articles and an ad-free version of this podcast. You'll also get to listen to the subscribers-only section where we talk about a bonus story each week. This podcast is made in partnership with Kaleidoscope. Another way to support us is by leaving a 5-star rating and review for the podcast. That stuff really helps us out. Here is briefly one of those from PDX Crow. 404 Media must surely be the most efficient value in tech media that exists today. The output and consequential change that these 4 journalists are able to produce week after week is astounding. This has been 404 Media. We'll see you again next week.